Hello, everyone. Welcome to another module under the topic of AI, where I will be talking about virtual classrooms and remote learning. I am Ms. Laxmi Nair, would be taking you through a PPT and enlighten you regarding what this topic contains. Before we begin, you all are already aware of what exactly we talk about when we use the terminology AI. Everyone knows I need not talk about it. So I feel let's move to our topic for the day. Let me share the screen with all of you all. Yes. So when I am talking about virtual classrooms and remote learning, virtual classroom is something that we all had seen or experienced when we had the pandemic COVID. Now, to be specific about remote learning, when the pandemic hit us in the year 2000, in the month of March, 2020 rather, sorry, to be specific, 2020, 3 years, three and a half, rather this 2020, 24, we will be having it, we'll be completing 4 years to it. So virtual classrooms and remote learning was something that all of us experienced somewhere down the line, and it did impact us in various ways. It had its own advantages, it had its own disadvantages. Now, if I want to talk about virtual classrooms, what exactly did it do to us? It brought in a lot of positivity. Virtual classrooms helped the to bridge the learning uh, disabilities, or rather, you'll say the learning difficulties that we had. So yes, virtual classrooms did help in a long way. It did create environment for the students, for the teachers. It brought in interaction when we talk about the real time interaction. It moved away from the traditional classroom setup, and we moved towards various platforms, whether it was Microsoft Teams, whether it was Zoom, whether it was Google Meet. There were multiple platforms that started slowly and steadily picking up when we went into the online mode of learning and teaching. Now, when I have to talk about virtual classrooms and remote learning, we need to understand that it will move from one setup to the other. So, if I have to talk about virtual setup or virtual classrooms, it talks about remote learning, and it definitely has become increasingly prevalent. Prevalent where? In education, yes. And not to forget, it is driven by technological advancements and the need for flexible and accessible learning environment. Flexible, accessible learning environment. Well, what does this mean? The words talk volume. We will move ahead slowly and steadily when we talk about three key aspects. The three key aspects where we talk about virtual classrooms would be the advantages, would be the disadvantages, would be the challenges that we are facing. Disadvantages or challenges, or not to forget the future trends. Now, if I have to talk about online interaction, or if I have to talk about content delivery, or if I have to talk about interactivity, accessibility, recorded sessions, all this comes as a part of the virtual classroom scenario. Accessibilities, yeah, here it talks about technological advancements. Oh, yes, definitely we need to have a technologically advanced setup to get into the virtual classroom setup. And flexibility. Flexibility, yes, we have the flexibility in learning environments and accessibility. That is only and only possible when we talk about being in a virtual setup. Now, keeping these aspects in mind, we move ahead and talk about the three important key aspects or considerations when it comes to virtual classrooms and remote learning. The first one we would be dealing with would be advantages. Now, advantages, how can it be and what are the advantages? Yes, flexibility and accessibility is something that we learned. in the introductory slide was learners can access education from anywhere where they're allowed to break down. Okay, and yes, it is very important and essential aspect when it talks about breaking down geographical barriers. Okay, during the pandemic we had many students, rather when I was taking up classes for my particular school that I was working in, there were many children or many of their parents who had relocated because of loss of job. They relocated to their hometowns. When they relocated to their hometowns, they were still accessible when we were taking classes. So our classes, when it went online, we had students from Himachal who had relocated back to their native. So it was from Himachal, from Bangalore, from Chennai, from Pune, from Goa. So geographical barriers that we talk about when we are in a traditional setup, that is broken down. Next is flexibility in scheduling allows students to learn at their own pace, accommodating different learning styles. So if I have to talk about synchronous teaching or asynchronous teaching, it has to be taken into consideration. The schedules that we understand the schedules that the teachers had set up when the when the classes were taken into consideration. Now, synchronous learning, asynchronous learning is at real time interaction. So when I'm talking about synchronous learning, it talks about students and the instructors who are engaging in live simultaneous communication through video conferencing, chat, or other interactive tools. Here, the advantage would be I can give my feedback to the student on the at the same time, immediate feedback is available and there's a structured environment. It also facilitates a discussion, but that does not happen when it is an asynchronous learning. But to be very specific, it says that the video or the audio, like what we do now, is recorded. The student can, at his or her own pace, understand the whole concept, learn it, and it is available to them 24/7, definitely for a particular period, but by then you have your own set of notes that are already made. So that's the flexibility and accessibility. Moving towards diverse learning resources, yes, access to a wide range of digital resources, multimedia content, and online tools enhances the learning experience. Teachers can incorporate various media formats to cater to different learning preferences. Some find it easy when it comes to PPTs. Some find it very easy when audio is put up. Some find it very easy when we have videos shown. So different students with their preferences, easy preferences, teachers can cater to that when it comes to diverse learning resources. And all this being available, the students automatically have a lot of advantage to it. Moving towards the next part, that is the third and the fourth part, fourth advantage. Here we talk about cost, low cost. So cost effectivity is very important. So how do we talk about cost effectiveness? Cost effectiveness is very important to keep one thing in our mind, and that is when we talk about reducing its cost when it comes to textbooks, physical classroom setup where you have the typical um, the furniture, and then you have uh, all that is involved to have a typical classroom setup. Nowadays, most of the classrooms also have the projectors. That is an added additional cost. When you are in a virtual setup, all this is not required. Students offers cost-effective options for students, educational institutions. Students also, they need not buy any textbook because everything is available to them online. Global collaboration. Global collaboration is something that we need to understand because here, students, please remember, we have educators coming from different parts of the world. So if I need to, so here many schools have something called as collaborative studies, where the particular school invites another school or another sister concern or another school of similar thought process, and the teachers have collaboration, and the teachers definitely come in through the Zoom meetings too, or the other various platforms that the school is using, utilizing, and there is an exchange of ideas, exchange of promotion of lot of cultural exchange, lot of sharing of cultural diversities. So multiple aspects are taken into consideration when we talk about global collaboration. Moving towards the next part where we talk about, so moving towards next part, we talk about personalized learning. So what exactly is personalized learning? When we talk about personalized learning, we need to understand that personalized is somewhere where you have the one-on-one interaction. It is an adaptive learning technology that usually tailors educational content to individual students. When we are in a traditional setup, we have a teacher normally caters to around a class that is brimming with students, somewhere uh, having a count of 45, 50. Sometimes if it's a state board school, might have students somewhere crossing 60, 70 also. So the traditional setup becomes very difficult for the child, for the teacher also, and for the student to have a one-on-one interaction. When you are in a virtual setup, the students can visit the various online portals that are set up, the various classrooms, like you have the Google Classroom, and they can revisit materials as needed. Similarly, they have something called as classroom setup in a Microsoft team also, where the student is given their login IDs and passwords, and they can refer to the materials that the teachers are on and time and again uploading on the respective classroom schedules. Technological skill development, yes, students and educators develop digital literacy and technology skills, which is very, very essential to move ahead on a virtual platform. Exposure to virtual tools prepare students for the tech-driven workforce ahead in their life too. It's not that easy if the student is not has no idea of what exactly is stored for them when it comes to technology. So being remotely even if it's a remote learning or even if it's a virtual classroom setup, if the child is trained, well trained, if the if the student is well trained, or even the facilitator, the teacher is well trained, it automatically exposes them to virtual tools, making it easy and simplifying their work. Environmental impact, the last but not the least advantage that we need to understand is, yes, in a traditional classroom, there is a lot of things that's taken into consideration. Commuting, the child has to commute. So if it is a bus, again, pollution. If it is a private vehicle, private vans, private buses, then you also have just a lot of traffic jam and all involved. Not to forget the paper usage. Extensively paper is used. That again impacts on the global environment. All this is taken into consideration when you talk about the advantages, because everything is very easily available on the virtual platform. Moving towards the next part where we talk about challenges. So what exactly are the challenges? If there are advantages, every aspect of AI has its own set of advantages and its challenges, or we also term it as the disadvantages. So what can be so pros and cons of everything is always taken into consideration. What are the challenges that we would be looking into in this? So yes, when we talk about challenges, we understand there are something called as technological barriers. We spoke about technological advancement some time back in advantages, but in the disadvantages, the first aspect itself talks about technological barriers. Barriers, where exactly are we hinting at, or what exactly are we talking about? When we talk about barriers, we need to understand that technological barriers can be one part or can be one aspect where if the student is not in a city or a place, or rather you can say even if it's in a village or in any vicinity where there is no high speed internet, it can hinder the participation of that particular student. Many a time during the pandemic, we had students talking about low connectivity, low net connectivity, the limited access to the high speed internet. And yes, here another aspect that we need to very clearly understand is that we talk about digital divide. Digital divide, digital divide itself, socioeconomic disparities. What is a digital divide? Inequitable access to technology and the internet can create disparities in education. So probably we are at a level where we have two schools and we had schools or we had parents who really were well to do and could manage a very high speed level internet. But when it comes to the villages or when it came to the lower middle class background, where probably the father was suffering from a loss of pay or a loss of job, at that particular time it became difficult to have uh, to pay a lot of money and indulge into high speed internet packages, so the student also at such given points of time suffered. We had the schools, the municipality school children who faced a lot of problems, because of which we had the learning process automatically going for a toss. Lack of physical interaction, lack of social interaction. So when I'm talking about physical interaction, what does it mean? What does it mean, social interaction? Social interaction over here can be reduced face-to-face interaction. So when you're going to your practice teaching classes and you realize that you are in front of the student, you understand or you can gauge their actions by the way they are, their feelings or what they are actually undergoing by the way they look or they interact or the facial expressions, which is not very common when it comes to a virtual setup, simply because in during a virtual setup the student may talk about just not having a good speed internet. So they might end up switching off their cameras or turning off their cameras and then doing what they want. So the ones who are confident definitely will sail through it, but the ones who are not very confident of the content that they are understanding, they might just cut off. Social development will impact, and the students, some of them may end up having a struggle with a lack of direct teacher student interaction. Okay, that matters a lot here. Coming back to the next one, where we talk about motivational challenges and assessment and evaluation. So here I need to make one thing very clear to all of you all, is that it requires strong self-discipline and motivation if students manage their own schedules. Usually, when we see in a normal setup, we have to keep encouraging certain students to do their best, to give their best. So, if there is an absence of physical classroom and the atmosphere can be totally taken, you can say disrupted, because it may affect the students' discipline, student discipline, self-discipline, because there's no lack of, because there's no motivation, lack of motivation, ultimately making it very challenging for the virtual environment. As assessment and evaluation, yes, assessment integrity is what we can talk about. Assessment integrity, ensuring the integrity of assessments in a virtual setup is very, 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 it poses as an extremely challenging situation, simply because the cases of cheating can be at a different level altogether. We did have students during the sessions, during the pandemic, where we had students not attending classes for days together, but coming for their examinations because they knew that giving exam was very simple because they had their multiple devices on and they wrote and they uploaded, and cheating cases were very evident. So the traditional evaluation methods may need to be adapted for online environments. Next, when I'm talking about teacher training, yes, it's not always possible in the remote areas to have continuous the teacher. If you have a particular teacher, you in the normal municipality setup and all, they're all teachers who have been there in the field of education, given their whole life in the field of education for a good amount of 20, 25, 30 years. And the pandemic all of a sudden came up and it became very difficult for the instructors because they were not quite familiar with the online methodologies, hence making it a setback for the students because they did not know what they were doing and how they were managing it. Screen time concerns were very, very, very massive because students started understanding that it was easy to be online for hours at a stretch, and it contributed to health issues, severe eyesight issues, particularly for the young students who did not know where to stop and how to stop and when to stop. So, balancing of the online activities and the offline activities became extremely crucial. Why? Because for the well being of the students, it had to be balanced, and that balance was not being maintained. Last but not the least, digital security and privacy. Yes, it is very, 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 very important to have digital security and privacy, which was not very easy in the online learning environment because cybersecurity had become insignificant. Protective, sensitive information and maintaining secure platforms are essential, and that needed to be taken into consideration. So when you are on a virtual platform, you need to not hurt the sentiments of the situations where I think in one of the modules you all have also learned about the ethics involved in AI. And under the ethics, you talk about plagiarism, you talk about not giving copyrights to the concerned people from where the things are taken. So yes, these are the challenges that we face when we talk about the virtual classrooms. Last but not the least, we move towards the future trends. Future trends, how can it be? What could it be? And where are we heading towards? So yes, when I'm talking about the future trends, I'm talking about hybrid learning models. I'm talking about advancement in edtech. Okay. I'm talking about virtual reality, augmented reality. I'm talking about blockchain credentials. I'm talking about AI integration, a lot of things to understand. So, yes, hybrid learning is supposed to be a blend of in person and online elements for a more flexible uh, educational experience. So, a blend of in-person and virtual learning, allowing for flexibility and adaptability. So basically, when I'm combining the benefits of face-to-face interactions with the advantages of remote learning, that's where we talk about hybrid learning models. So hybrid learning can definitely be considered in the long run to have to keep a lot of things in mind. Next is we talk about advancement in edtech. So, what do you mean by advancement in edtech? It means continued development, where in educational technologies to enhance virtual learning experiences. So, integration of artificial intelligence. That's why I said AI integration. So, increased use of AI, artificial intelligence, for personalized learning experiences and data driven insights. Okay, augmented reality for immersive learning. Augmented reality, yes, enhanced immersive experience for better engagement. All this will put it to be put in specific words. All this will be enrich the experience for the learners. Then we talk about increased focus on soft skills. So if I'm talking about soft skills, yes, recognition of the importance of development in remote learning is very, very important. Of soft skills is very, very important because efforts are are needed to incorporate collaborative projects, communication skills, and problem solving into virtual curriculum. So in your virtual curriculum, we will have to have projects or we will have to take projects where we talk about more of communication skills. How are you give a particular project or you give a particular case study where you are asking the students to involve themselves in the form of a problem in the form of a group or individual, or you can have the pairing method, and you're giving them case studies where problem solving techniques are taken into consideration. Global learning communities, yes, we are talking about lifelong learning communities. we are talking about growing emphasis on connecting students and educators globally for collaborative learning experience, something that I just spoke about some time back, because global collaboration is extremely essential. Platforms facilitating cross-cultural understanding and exchange. It's needed because it's a need of the hour. It's all we have something called as where we talk about Vasudev Kutumbam. So when we are talking about that, the whole world is one. We take it into consideration. So we need to have platforms which talks about cultural exchange and understanding it, accepting it, and definitely uh, moving towards good collaboration, so that the experience gained through this collaboration can be beneficial not only for the person in the front, but also for our students and ourselves as teachers and facilitators. Continuous professional development, ongoing training and development opportunities for educators to enhance their virtual teaching skills is an essential aspect when we talk about the future trends. So, lifelong learning platforms are needed to adapt to evolving skill requirements, recognition of the evolving nature of remote learning, and the need for continuous adaptation is something that we are looking for when we talk about continuous professional development. It's a need of the hour, specifically for the teachers. And yes, virtual classrooms. When I finally conclude my topic, I would like to say that virtual classrooms and remote learning have both advantages and challenges, and the future likely involves a combination of both when I'm talking about online and traditional approaches to meet the diverse needs of the learners in a rapidly evolving educational landscape. So it has to be the entire scenario has to be calculated and and put in a combination of various methodologies, but the two important combinations or two important approaches would be the online and the traditional, and that blend will bring in a lot of changes. We would be able to have a personalized learning experiences for our students, and this continuous evaluation or this continuous evolution will help focus will help our students focus on improving accessibilities, and lot many aspects will be taken into consideration. So yes, something that we shouldn't forget, or we shouldn't uh, we should highlight and focus would be that when we have uh, advantages like when the virtual classrooms are providing us flexibility, accessibility, we also are facing challenges related to technology issues, need for self development, self discipline existing, but continuous improvements in this technology and pedagogy will help us to aim to enhance the overall virtual learning experience, and that's how we need to understand and move ahead. I hope I have covered up a lot more of what we needed to speak under this particular topic. Please go through this thoroughly and understand why it is needed, and then you will be able to solve the Google Classroom form accordingly. Thank you so much and have a nice day all.